Live in studio this evening by Stephen Ray and Neil Martin. Neil sitting opposite me with his cello in hand, Stephen facing him with his back to me so that he can see what's happening musically. And let's start with a poem, in fact. And we'll go to the collection Wintering Out. The poem is Wedding Day, or Os Gaeilge, Lá na Banishe.
Tá agla orm. Anuam stoppa lár an lé agus íona tón haar cheann gan stéanú. Tegan a diara seo eile an méla alta a las muid an taxi. So in de broin ag éiri in ar néana is éad ag sméidú. Nuair a chuas go teach an asol, Biúd, crí, saoite, móide, scríbhín grá. Lig dom, colú de bhráid chun an airfort.
Lá na Banishe an sin, translation from Gabriel Rosenstock of Seamus Heaney's poem Wedding Day, from the collection Wintering Out. Stephen Ray, the actor reciting the poem for us there, and alongside him Neil Martin on cello. Stephen, this whole project, Conlan or Gleaning. Gleaning is such a Heaney word, really, isn't it? Yeah. What exactly is going on with these translations? Where are they from? How long have they been about the place?
Well, I don't know when Gabriel wrote it. I have the book here. I don't know.
Late 1989, I think.
Late 80s.
As long as that.
First published 1989, yeah.
Okay. Well, they're lovely, but you know, the originals are lovely too.
But when Heaney's poetry is translated into Irish, I mean, his English as spoken is so much the English of Ulster, as you know. What does it feel like, even for an actor reciting it, when it comes into Irish then?
Well, I'm just because my Irish is not as wonderful as I'd like it to be, but I mean, a lot of Seamus's, you feel it is kind of, it's certainly rural, a lot of it, and the imagery is rural, and it's not urban at all, and it seems to be great, and I think Gabriel's a wonderful, wonderful poet as well. So it's a wonderful meeting of two poets, two great poets.
And I guess if we think of the time of those early collections from Seamus Heaney, it links in. In fact, one of the collections, Fieldwork, I think is a direct reference to Field Day, Stephen Ray, that was set up in and around the time of these early connections. How early, or what was Seamus Heaney's involvement in that company that you set up, and that cultural, really, group that you yourself and Brian Friel started?
Well, it was simple enough. Brian and I started put on the play translations, and then because if we were going to continue, we had to be a charity, and that meant we had to have a board of directors, and we decided that we would have actively creative directors. So we got Heaney and Dean, fantastic people, you know, Paulin, Hammond, unbelievable, really.
And Seamus's input into that, I mean, he had such a wonderful creative mind, as you say, but there was also that academic side to him, and a kind of a statesman-like quality to him, you would have to say as well. What was his input, would you say, at board level? What did he have that kind of rounded that board off?
Well, I mean, we had fantastic intellectual input there, you know, with Dean and Heaney. But I mean, yeah, Heaney understood the importance of what we were doing, and he led it in a way, you know. But everyone took their turn to be the leader, you know. It was incredible sitting around talking to those people.
And when you think of that play, Translations, I'm wondering, did Seamus speak much about his own relationship with the Irish language? I mean, you said at the top of the piece tonight, you know, your Irish isn't what you would like it to be. Did Seamus ever speak about his relationship with the language?
I think he had a very close relationship, although he wasn't an active speaker. I think that's fair enough to say. Mm-hmm. And I must say, actually, even though everything is very rural, when I was at Queen's, this poet that I'd never heard of called Seamus Heaney handed some poems into the Poetry Society, and I had to read some of them. And one of them is one that has disappeared, and it was called Corner Cafe Vespers, and it started by saying, "Lead us not into tight blue jeans."
Wow.
But then he gave all that up, you know.
And
I never saw him in blue jeans anyway.
But that relationship of his with the Irish, I know that he gave these translations his blessing. Gabriel was keen to do them, and Seamus was very keen that they would be done by them. It's almost a political act in many ways, isn't it, to take those English language poems and translate them, I'm saying, back into Irish for some reason, because there's a sense that maybe that was the original wellspring.
Well, I think that you've put it very clearly. You know, it was the wellspring. You know, when you think that he's a contemporary of Michael Hartnett and Thomas Kinsella, who were trying to connect to the tradition of writing in Irish, you know, and Hartnett's book, you know, Farewell to English, and they were having great difficulty with it too. So this was his way to reconnect with the Irish language.
A way of doing it. And Neil, at what point then did you become embroiled and involved in the whole Field Day project? A little bit later on, I would guess.
1988.
So you were saying 1980 was translation, so we're 8 plays in, I suppose, to the Field Day project.
There was an evening in the Guildhall in Derry, and Davy Hammond, whom I knew through music, asked me to take part in that evening. And I shared a stage that night with all of the aforementioned directors, and Nolly Casey and myself playing music along with Davy and so on. And I've told this to Stephen Ray before. My life changed after that evening, because it was such a deep honour to be up with that. You knew of this force. I knew of Field Day, of course, and what they were doing, and I'd been to see productions and when they would be on tour, but to actually for the first time be up sharing the stage with these people was extraordinary. And then the following year, 1989, we did Terry Eagleton's play St. Oscar, and I wrote and directed music for that, and it became a very solid relationship with Field Day, and especially Stephen and myself in all of the years since. So we're collaborating for 34 years at this stage, you know.
And in fact, I remember seeing you, I don't know how many years back now, it must be 5 or 6 years back at the Kilkenny Arts Festival. That was, again, a collaboration between yourself and Neil Stephen of Seamus's final published work, that book from the Init. And that final book, isn't it, where he goes down to the underworld and meets his father. There was something very poignant that was
book
actually...
6, yeah. And the father sounded like Seamus's father, It was very, very poignant indeed,
Yeah, and that was quite close. Obviously, it was published just after his death, wasn't it? It was in the process of coming out at that time.
Yes, I mean his translations of classics are unbelievable. You know, as the one we did, Sean.
We did. It's a declaration of interest here. Stephen directed me in The Cura Troy, which was Seamus's
version of Philoctetes.
Yes, and I played the young Neoptolemus. But talk to me a little bit then about that performative aspect of Heaney's work. You know, you hear him reading his poems and you think, jeepers, I wouldn't go near that, because he has such a phenomenal capacity to actually read his own work. But what do you see? And you're here. You've done the Enid and you've done other works of his as well. What is that aspect of Heaney's work that makes it so performative?
I don't know. It's so alive. You know, those words, that poetry, and with us, you know, us from above a certain part of Ireland, he gives. We can do it in South Derry accents. Even though some people try to resist that, but it frees you from what they call standard English or whatever. When we were doing Cura Troy, everybody was free to speak as themselves, and that's when it's a wonderful classical play. It was thrilling, you know.
Yeah, well, that was my abiding memory, was being able to, have these high-flowing, noble thoughts, but all in your own, effectively, the way we spoke in and around Monaghan and
is that where you're from?
That's where I'm from, Stephen. Yes, thank you very much. Now, let's have another poem from you before you start getting at me.
Aye.
Jukishke. This is a drink of water from Fieldwork, which I suppose is a direct reference to Field Day itself. Jukishke is the title Oscuilga.
Jukishke. Hagu si gach majin ag tarrant iske an gort aneas on a shanial tog di. Na kosa ag imacht uhe. Troch an chidjel, clatrail an wicked. Mal de minuendo a leanta a ske he. Is kivin lom an aprun glas, cruan, ban crossach, an wicked egg cor har moil. Gis gan tribble a goha, mar a vehu a fak an chidjel. Eichanta agus galach lan, e shalu, har an ban, shud. Hitchu sheer an finjog isteach is leo, san iske a vehu, liaga, amach amord, ach ar homas chanol ahur, leve gilish don rua, ar a copansa. Quimni an mrontor, ag tregan an auer.
Jukishka there, or a drink of water. That's the translation of Seamus Heaney's poem of that title, a drink of water from the collection Fieldwork. Just listening to the performative aspect of it too. I know, Stephen, you've spoken before about when you asked Brian Friel what's translations about, and he said it's about the language, and he wasn't just talking about the play, he was talking about everything. There was also an interesting piece of advice you got from Beckett, which would be useful, I would guess, in terms of performing Oscuilga, where maybe you're looking more at the feel and the muscularity, the feel of the language in your mouth.
Yeah, he said don't think about meaning, think about rhythm. But actually, from having worked a little on this, I think I suddenly find meaning very important,
Just explain that to me.
Because I think the meaning can affect the rhythm, I'm coming to terms with it. If it's not your first language, then maybe meaning assumes a greater importance for a while anyway.
Yeah, because I'm interested in that, like even if you think of a child learning language, half time they don't understand half the English words we say to them. And we think because we explain it to them in English that they now understand it. But of course, they're just picking it up piecemeal as they go along.
Well, we all do, with languages. It's extraordinary, really, isn't it? That just... I mean, it's wonderful young kids are bilingual without even knowing it.
The given note, the title Merla ach Oscuilga an nota chiavachta.
Here in Inish Vicalain, a mohan cloch hug she leis an teir seo onicha. Hula a hiluaku a vialanuanch, fumana, jawra, Korstev le tjumlachan drachina, ach nar heensa hige Verleanjach she a merer shud is a gloese na wiltje, a vigsleracht eeska. Mar gorgau she shud lesh fein stiach an illen, agus hug an tiomlan leis. Frab an cheer nos a violin line. Mas dabar shin a hugan shef port na buki no nacha es komalium sa shiok. Thug sé leis an nghaithe ón Lár Atlantic. Ní ó éon áit sé a bhuaine sé de hir, tugan an bótha go sólanta a achan sin féin tríd an air.